go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the play. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the play. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the play. Henny, he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang. Gang, gang. OG, I draw up the play. Niggas don't know what to think. Thought I get money, you change. What you thought we was the same? Still stay away from them clones. Niggas better leave me alone. Talking about niggas as though you run with niggas who don't know you. Whoa, I made that zagging when city to city. You niggas not hot in your state. If it was money to get a hit Henny, we get it and never complain. Same go for the gang, and we split it up all the same. I can't really eat, let's stay straight, cause we go way back in the day. My day ones from back in the day, they still hang around me today. You wanna come round us, you can't. I'm rolling up loud, it's great. But mama, she bad but complain, cause I'm too in love with my dreams. And I gotta get on the plane, and go get this money with them. I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
I get the bag with the gang, taking that Zach to the bank. Henny be all in my drink. You niggas is stupid, you think that shit change? You not even hot in your gang. Ain't nothing even hot about your gang. You niggas be lying about same. Be posting them pictures of guns for the fame. Niggas just look at me different now. Say that's your man, but he a clown. Don't fuck around with the fuck arounds. Little nigga, you should cut it out. Me and my niggas take different routes. Punch a bitch nigga all in his mouth. Hold up my nigga, we different now. I need a Robert, it's different style. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I get a bitch today, she probably a foreign model. I get a check today, I spent it all tomorrow. I'm with my gang today, tomorrow never promise.
OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang. OG, I draw up the plate, and then he go get the cake. Then we link up with the gang, gang, gang.
I think I'm cute. I know I'm sexy. I've got the look that drives the girls while I got the moves that really move them. I send chills up and down their spines. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. Let's go. I make them hot. I make them shiver. Rebekah gets weak. Whenever I'm around, she sees me walk. She hears me talk. I make them feel like her God ain't real. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just the U.S. champ. U.S. champ. I'm not a boy toy. Fucking jump. Let's do this. That mic flip though.
Hands off the merchandise. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy. I'm just a sexy boy. I'm not your boy toy.
Welcome everybody to another edition of the Pocket Locker Podcast. I am your host with the most all the way from the East Coast. And as always, folks, Obama is in... airplane mode. Folks, we have got a fantastic show lined up for you. Little bit of fun, little bit of heartache. You might want to seriously get into the right groove for this one. So let us go ahead and do our communion. Please raise your glasses and hold on to your asses. Through him, with him, in the unity of the flying man. All glory and honor is yours who flied for our sins forever and ever. You may drink. All right, and this next one is our communion song. It comes to us from Foy Vance. It is called Where Everybody Knows Your Name.
Dublin, and he's going to play us out for you. Finish us up.
Do you know what? I don't know the name of this song actually, but I know the song, and so will you.
Oh, look forward to this. Foy Vance, take it away.
All right, Caterpillar was first.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure
Pragmatic Crystal is second.
Wouldn't you like to get away?
Thanks for the shout out on the line,
Sometimes you
gang.
want to go where everybody
Appreciate
knows
that.
your name. And they're always
Look at
glad
the
you
trees
came.
third.
You wanna be where you can see. Troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name. Well, all those nights when you got no lights and the check is in the mail, and your little angel on the collared by its tail. Your third fiancé didn't show. Well, sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and you're always glad.
All right, I got Caterpillar, Pragmatic Crystal.
You
Look
wanna
at the
be
trees.
where you can see.
Cameron Bennett fourth.
Troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows knows your name.
Calasia's here.
Well, you get out of bed and the coffee's dead. The morning isn't looking bright.
Pump.
You shrink right off to Europe and he doesn't even
Carrie
write.
Chrysler's in the chat.
Your girlfriend says she's not a girl.
KCA Randy's in the house.
Be glad there's one place in the world where everybody knows
Stephanie
your
Elms
name.
is here. Melody Joy is here.
And they're always glad you came.
Sal is in the house.
You wanna be where you can
Vegetative
see
State is
troubles
here.
are all
Slug
the
is here.
same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name. You wanna be where you can see troubles are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Boy, Vance. Most common word coming in by text, boy, is goosebumps. Believe it or not, we've had that repeatedly across the whole series. If you want to see...
All right, gang, we've got a good show lined up for you. We actually are going to get into a very serious topic today, which is modern slavery. I really feel like for some reason there are certain topics that keep coming up, mostly because Christians have to defend it in relation to the Bible. And, you know, one of the things I notice is we tend to have this conversation about slavery as though it's a thing that only happened in the past and that it's over. And I think if we're going to keep having conversations about slavery, then we need to sort of catch up, right? And get with the idea that slavery is not a phenomenon reserved to the past, but something that millions of people are living with today. I think otherwise we're not really taking our own history of slavery that serious, right? We're sort of like, oh, you know, wow, man, wasn't it a shame that black people were enslaved all those generations ago? And then, whoop-de-doo-de-doo, isn't it so much better, the world that we live in now and all this? And it's like we're doing victory laps over slavery like it's something we've conquered. And I just feel like that is a tremendous disservice to people who in one form or another, still living in captivity. But before we do that, let's have a little bit of fun, because this raggedy bitch Rebekah has dropped some more fucking nonsense to utterly, I don't know, fucking contaminate the sterile space that is the internet. You know, before Rebekah Davis, there was just no misinformation, no bullshit, no none of that. But nah, seriously, I can't stand this hoe. I just don't understand why a person like this insists on building an audience, insists on having influence in the world, and more importantly than all that, insist on having a presence and the influence in my world, in my community, in the spaces where I have to dwell. You understand? So you need to go somewhere. All right, so look, let me update my status real quick. I'm no longer doing anime and sleep. I'm actually live on YouTube. But I do want to thank Wayne, Lena, Look at the Trees, Maya Atkinson, Stephanie, UC Love, and Vegetative State for joining me here in Gather. All right, let's talk about why Christians fast. If you were thinking because they're morons, that is the correct answer. You are a moron. I need that Armin Brown sample. But let's listen to what she has to say, because if I have to hear this, you have to suffer through this too.
So you look at something like Romans 7, where Paul says, what I want to do, I don't do, and what I don't want to do, I end up doing. And he says, I've come to the conclusion that there is nothing good within myself. And then he clarifies, he says, that is my flesh. And he talks about this notion that there are sinful inclinations embedded within the members of my body.
I don't know what the hell I'm talking
So certain habits, if you will. And then he talks about, in other instances, about renewing the mind and then submitting the body, beating my body into submission. And you have this interesting picture of, to quote another verse, where someone said the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So you have this war, if you will, that even Paul says it's a war against the flesh and spirit. And what I think this does is it puts us in positions to exercise discipline, to exercise character development, to exercise spiritual formation. So this is essentially the idea behind fasting, right? For believers, when we fast, it's not, we starve ourselves so God can listen to us. When used as a spiritual discipline, what you're essentially doing is you're telling your body, I know what you want, and I know you want to eat, but I am submitting my body and disciplining it to pretty much
Look at
tell the body,
Rebekah's
you're not in charge.
mind,
I tell
pussy
you
getting wet.
You don't tell me when I get to eat.
Look.
So you begin to feed the spirit or the soul, if you will, as opposed to the flesh.
I'm feeling hot and bothered under the collar.
So I think this falls in line with just the way God has
it does. It falls
to grow
in line.
Him, to grow as people,
to grow in Him,
character, to grow
to build character,
in our spiritual formation, and to grow in our discipline.
grow in Him.
Wow, I love that
Wow,
answer. That is so
that's
cool.
just so great. That's just
His
so.
own self
Why is she singing? What? Oh my God, I forgot that she does that. Holy shit, what a terrifying sound. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Listen, evangelical Christians, y'all are some pathetic ass motherfuckers. Since we're talking about the topic of slavery, this is just so on brand. You guys are just so desperate. So desperate to be persecuted, so desperate to suffer, so desperate to experience agony and rejection and pain that you just insist on doing it to yourselves. When it comes to the topic of slavery, do not let anybody ever try to convince you that Christianity or any of these other fucking traditional religions are anti-slavery. No, at their core, they are the desire to be a slave. Nobody who is free calls anybody else Lord or master. That's the end of it. There's nothing else to be said about the subject. And so, just like in the case where these evangelicals are so hungry to get a taste of that sweet, sweet persecution, they literally subject themselves to recreational slavery instead of realizing that motherfuckers who've gone through real slavery are trying to get you to understand the shit ain't nothing to play with. Now, there are many perfectly fine reasons to exercise some discipline in your diet. I myself happen to routinely be like, what do they call that shit? Something, intermittent faster or whatever the fuck. You could do that if that's how you want to get down with your dietary habits or your fitness routines, or you got some particular medical, physical, social, aesthetic type goals and situations that you're trying to address. I'm with you 100% support. And we're all about that discipline and self-control around here. Everything in moderation, fam. But look, let me make you understand what I'm talking about real quick. This bullshit fasting, this just recreational, I'm at war with my own body and I will subject it to starvation so that I can prove to myself that I can conquer hunger. Y'all niggas just stuck on stupid. Just stuck on stupid. And this is what I'm talking about. Y'all have no idea what that shit is really like. And again, you play with the starvation with a fucking refrigerator full of food. No, go live like the motherfuckers in the global south, the motherfuckers that's really dealing with global inequity. That is really a mystery where their next meal is going to come from and what the quality and quantity of said meal might be. What, that's what you about? Why don't you go over there and talk to them about conquering their hunger, conquering their bodies, being at war with themselves to find greater expression of this spiritual blase flavonoids mumbo jumbo bullshit. And then the motherfuckers want to run around with their nose in the air acting all snobbish like they doing something. Like they're literally becoming morally superior people to the rest of us because they're starving themselves for Magic Sky Daddy, who just apparently can't get enough sacrifice. He just needs you to he created you perfectly, but apparently you have to go to war with that perfect nature just to please this motherfucker. He made you horny as shit. But the real thing is to resist all of that sexual temptation and live a pure life. He made it so your ass needs to eat every single day, and most of us have become habituated to eating multiple times a day. But really, you ought to starve yourself just to please him and show him, again, you are willing to go to war with your perfect nature. What the fuck is wrong with this shit? What is wrong with y'all? Why do y'all think this is okay? When are you gonna grow up? And you're sitting there all smiley like, this is some foolishness, y'all. Some straight foolishness. I'm reading the chat real quick. They about bigotry, not the Bible. Yeah, absolutely. Virtue signaling fasting. Exactly. Suffering is a virtue. Exactly. Just a bunch of bullshit. Just a bunch of bullshit. All right, y'all, let's go ahead and talk about this real shit so we can get up on out of here. Let's talk about modern day slavery. All right, so look, before we go ahead and roll this tape, let me just tell y'all a little bit about the young man we're going to be hearing from this evening. Nah, seriously. So I learned about Kevin Bales, who's the professor that we're going to be hearing from when I was an undergraduate at Penn State. Actually, y'all know my dog, Sam, is named after a sociologist of race, Sam Richards. And I was a teaching assistant. I was a student, then a teaching assistant, and a trainer of trainers and all of this shit for the Race Relations Project at Penn State. And Kevin Bales is one of the faculty members that would come in and give a lecture to the class. It was a very popular class, like 400 people in the class or some shit like that. And then you have like recitation sections where you have conversations about race and identity and all of these type of issues. And you had to read Disposable People. Like that's one of the texts of the book, of the class. And so you get really quite familiar with modern day slavery, the forms it takes, where it's at, what it looks like. But I had the privilege of meeting him a couple times, and he always tells this story of a particular young lady that he interviewed as just one of the many people he interacted with that's in the book. And it's such a heartbreaking story because, you know, he does all the sociologist, bureaucratic paperwork and gets the proper clearances. And a lot of this is essentially you have to, you know, offer a sense of shelter or something like that to your research subjects. And so he's dealing with this young lady who's dealing with living in modern day slavery, and essentially, you know, the people bring her to him for this interview, and then he has to like let her go back into slavery, right? And every time he tells the story, like he starts crying and everybody starts crying. So I have very powerful emotional memories of his work because it's in his book, right? It's in his book. Like that's a book that bleeds. I'm sure Derek knows what I'm talking about when I say that, right? When people just put so much of themselves into their work that it can't help but come out in the text. And then, you know, every time he presents this stuff, you know, his sense of desperation and heartache always really resonated with me. So he is like, I think now a professor of modern slavery or something like that. I think that's actually his job title these days. But yeah, like this is one of my dudes, one of my academic heroes, one of the people early on that was an example for me of people who just find that thing that's, you know, what drives them, what they think is super, super important, and they just go for it. I had so many great academic role models, and he was always one of them. And of course, being a TA, like I got to hang out with him and stuff like that. You know, after his talks and everything like that, and he was always really gracious to us and told us a ton of extra stories and really invested his time with us. So appreciate that. That's my intro, and let's go ahead and get into his talk. Actually, I want to pull up some statistics for y'all real quick. Let me switch cameras. The reason I want to do this real quick is because the talk is from a little while ago, and sometimes, you know, it allows us to kind of get a little bit of perspective, but I'm looking at a source here. I'll show you guys. From 2002. Okay, and here we go. You might think slavery is a thing of the past, but right now, almost 50 million people are trapped in slavery worldwide. It's a problem that affects every country on earth, including yours. In many ways, slavery may look different from the slavery of the transatlantic slave trade, but modern slavery as a term encompasses many forms of slavery, including human trafficking and people being born into slavery. There are hundreds of definitions of modern slavery. All of these include aspects of control, involuntary actions, and exploitation. At Anti-Slavery International, we define modern slavery as, quote, when an individual is exploited by others for personal or commercial gain, whether tricked, coerced, or forced, they lose their freedom. This includes, but is not limited to, human trafficking, forced labor, and debt bondage. Our mission is to stop slavery, to secure freedom for everyone, everywhere, always. Modern slavery is all around us, often hidden in plain sight. People can become enslaved, making our clothes, serving our food, picking our crops, working in factories, or working in houses as cooks, cleaners, or nannies. Victims of modern slavery might face violence or threats, be forced into inescapable debt, or have their passport taken away and face being threatened with deportation. Many people have fallen into this trap because they were trying to escape poverty or insecurity, improve their lives, and support their families. Now they can't leave. According to the latest global estimates of modern slavery from 2022, from Walk Free, the International Labor Organization, and the International Organization for Migration, 49.6 million people live in modern slavery and forced labor and forced marriage. Roughly a quarter of all victims of modern slavery are children.
22 million people are in forced marriages. 2 out of 5 of these people were children. Of the 27.6 million people trapped in forced labor, 17.3 million are in forced labor exploitation in the private economy, 6.3 million are in commercial sex exploitation, and nearly 4 million are in forced labor imposed by state authorities. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the conditions that lead to modern slavery. Migrant workers are particularly vulnerable to forced labor. Types of slaveries today. Modern slavery takes many forms. The most common are human trafficking, the use of violence, threats, or coercion to transport, recruit, or harbor people in order to exploit them for purposes such as forced prostitution, labor, criminality, marriage, or organ removal. Forced labor, any work or services people are forced to do against their will, usually under threat of punishment. Debt bondage, bonded labor, the world's most widespread form of slavery. People trapped in poverty borrow money and are forced to work to pay off the debt, losing control over both their employment conditions and the debt. Descent-based slavery, where people are born into slavery, a very old form of slavery where people are treated as property and their slave status has been passed down the maternal line. Child slavery, when a child is exploited for someone else's gain. This can include child trafficking, child soldiers, child marriage, and child domestic slavery. Forced and early marriage, when someone is married against their will and cannot leave. Most child marriages can be considered slavery. Domestic servitude, domestic work, and domestic servitude are not always slavery, and when properly regulated can be an important source of income for many people. However, when someone is working in another person's home, they may be particularly vulnerable to abuses, exploitation, and slavery, as they might be hidden from sight and legal protection. Why are people in slavery today? People end up trapped in slavery because they're vulnerable to being tricked, trapped, and exploited, often as a result of poverty and exclusion, and because laws do not properly protect them. People can be particularly vulnerable in modern slavery when external circumstances push them into taking risky decisions in search of opportunities to provide for their families, or when people find they are simply pushed into jobs and exploitative conditions. Anyone could be pressed into forced labor, but people in vulnerable situations, such as being in debt or not having access to their passport, are most at risk. Crises like the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change make people even more vulnerable to exploitation. Where do we find slavery? People are being exploited and pushed into slavery all around the world. While it may take different forms, we're committed to ending slavery for everyone, everywhere. Slavery is a problem in the UK, where many people experience human trafficking, bonded labor, and forced labor. Many products on our local shelves might have been made by people in forced labor, but the complex supply chains that businesses have created might make it harder for businesses to spot exploitation and abuses in their supply chain. In many cases, they even hide behind this complexity to evade responsibility. That's why we are pushing for new laws to protect workers and hold businesses accountable for exploitation occurring in their supply chains. Slavery may be hidden, but it exists and it's controlling the lives of millions of people. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and hear from Kevin Bales. Somebody's in Gather dropping stuff. Appreciate you guys, though. Please let me know. Is that Lena? Lena, you want to holler at me about slavery? I thought you might. Here we go.
Mr. Bales.
My guy.
This is a very sobering talk about modern slavery.
Thanks, Moses. And you can tell how much he respects my work that he puts me on after the belly dancer. It's a no-win situation, and particularly, I have to say, I'm one of Amy Lehman's greatest fans, and I just, my dream is to someday grow up hair like her. I mean, she's phenomenal. The woman is phenomenal. My work's about contemporary slavery, and it takes me all over the world, and it's taken me to the Democratic Republic of Congo as well, and where I've seen what she does there, and it's.
Yes, YouTube punk. Stephanie Helms did a stream about it yesterday. Check out Stephanie Helms' channel. The link's in the description.
It's great. In fact, I'm walking around in Walikale there, a tiny UN protected space in eastern Congo. You can't get in by road. You have to go by helicopter because the warring factions just won't let it happen. I spent a lot of time down mines like this one, medieval type mines, where slave labor is mining the gold in Western Africa that ends up in your jewelry. And as I've done this over the last 20
Elon Musk
years,
stuff.
I've spent most of the time that I'm doing that work around the world with people in slavery, really focusing immediately and intensely on the people I meet in slavery who are right in front of me. This woman, for example, is a hereditary slave. The terror that you see in her eyes is not even about her slavery. It's about the fact that her slave master had just decided that she was too old and too useless, and he was just going to dump her, that he was just going to throw her out, and she was going to lose the tiny pittance of food and shelter that she did have. She was terrified by that fact and wanted to know if there was any way that we could help her to deal with the fact that her life was being cut off, even a life in slavery. And of course, I did that because you have to focus very intensely on the individuals to learn what that lived experience of slavery is about. You have to do that because we don't understand slavery terribly well. Better these days, but not terribly well, because slaves rarely have voices. The types of slavery around the world are complex, and we have to think very hard about how it works. This is a young man that I met who had come out of slavery just 2 days before I met him. He had come from Mali looking for work in the Ivory Coast. He had ended up enslaved on a cocoa farm, and in fact, they were farming a lot of other things besides cocoa. He was in shock at the time that we chatted. He had been beaten, as you can see, very, very terribly. And I've for a long time written books and talked about the different types of slavery and how these things work. To give you a bit of background, I'm talking about slavery, which is still the same sort of slavery that we've had throughout all human history. One person completely controlling another person, using violence to maintain that control, and using that control to usually exploit them economically, but possibly sexually and in other ways as well. This is a map of slavery today. There's slavery in pretty much every single country of the world. And the darker areas of this map are areas of higher density of slavery. So not the raw numbers, but the proportion of the population that's actually in slavery. So if you look in Northwest Africa, you'll see the country of Mauritania. That's the place that we believe has the highest proportion of slavery in the world. About 4% of the population is enslaved. Haiti, which of course on this map is just a tiny dot there in the Caribbean, we believe to be the second highest, probably around 2% of the population. But you'll notice that there are, except I think for North Korea, there are no white spaces because, and it's not because North Korea doesn't have slavery, it's because we just can't get data. Every country, the United States, Canada, Britain, where I live, even Iceland has slavery. Now, as I was going around, I also learned a couple of other things. One was that if slavery is what it's always been, there is one new thing about slavery, and that is that the cost of acquiring a human being into slavery has collapsed in historical terms. If you look across all of human history, and I've done the stats back for the last 4,000 years, you discover that slaves have been expensive on average. The average slave across most of human history would cost the equivalent of about $60,000 Canadian in today's money. Average slave, an agricultural worker, or a chap like one of these little Indian boys who are used to haul rocks. Today, in part for a number of reasons, but having to do with the population explosion, creating an enormous glut of potentially enslavable people, means that there's literally a supply which far exceeds the demand. It means that a little boy like this or a boy like this in Nepal, where these are used for hauling rock, can be acquired for between $10 and $20 Canadian. that has a very crucial impact on the nature of slavery. Because if slaves in the past were investments, like tractors or trucks, people would often, usually, take care of them. Slaves today are disposable inputs in economic processes. They're more like styrofoam cups. You buy them cheaply, you use them, when you're finished, you crumple them up and throw them away. And these boys I know well because we've done work there with them in Nepal. If they fall down on those mountain trails, if they break a leg, they just walk off and leave them because it's less expensive to acquire a new child down in the town or in a village than it is to repair one of these children. Those are the two key things I wanted you to know as a background. About 39 million slaves in the world today, and the complete collapse in the price of acquiring a slave.
You'll notice a couple of themes right here. Even compared to when he gave this talk, the number has only gotten way higher. And as the recent 2022 article let us know, he's talking about it becoming easier to acquire a person than going from being a serious valued investment to cheap and disposable. They're getting cheaper and more disposable. All right, so let's just focus on the contrast between the reality and the stories we're telling ourselves.
Now, the other part that I really wanted to talk about today is new work that I've been doing that's in a book that I'm about to put out. And that's because around the world, I would see not just slaves being horrifically abused, but slaves being used to horrifically abuse the environment. Places like this quarry. Now, I want to go a bit on with this quarry, but this is a quarry where you'll see whole families working, and you'll see their children working. They're hereditary slaves very often in South Asia. They've never known anything else. Their parents and grandparents have been enslaved and held by the people the families that own the quarry. And this is a very rare photograph that I'm excited to show you because one of my good colleagues in India took this picture by tricking this slave master to show off his slaves in his quarry. And if you look down by the water, you'll see tiny children working there in that quarry. Now, that's the nature of slavery today. But the part that was beginning to open my eyes was also about the environmental destruction, because this quarry that his family has been using slave labor to rip from the land of northern India is a protected national forest. He bribes the forest rangers, he's paid off the officials. It's part of a wide-scale, global, in fact, phenomenon in which slave labor is being used to destroy the environment that we hope to protect. This is a similar area in Ghana, a protected national forest, ripped to pieces by open-cast, open-area gold mining, which has destroyed the entire space, and not just destroyed it and ripped the trees away and the topsoil and killed the animals and the plants that live there, but poisoned it with mercury, because that's what you use to get the gold flecks out of the river-bound sands, poisoned it with mercury to a depth that means it will never be farmable for at least 3 or 4 generations. And the mercury within those sands and within the plants and the environment there will spread out through the fish and the animals and the insects and the birds, and then into the diets and the drinking water and the washing water of the humans that live around it as well. Another man pouring mercury, even as the picture was taken, over sands as part of the recovery process of getting gold out of a forest that's a protected national forest. Some of it doesn't go quite that blatant and dramatic. This man was climbing up out of a deep shaft mine. You're not going to see the environmental destruction in a deep shaft mine for gold, but what you will see is that he'll be dead. 6 months, 18 months, silicosis, working with nothing but one little torch or flashlight. That's it for protections down in the holes. The pounding of quartzite materials means that a disease that will kill you in Canada, if you were ever exposed to silicon dusts in maybe 30 years, is affecting these workers in 15, 16, 18 months, that kind of acute chronic silicosis. I began to see all this and I began to say, now wait a minute, what if? I'd been working for a very long time upon the human rights side of slavery, but I kept thinking, what if? What if these things are actually tightly related to each other? So I'm going to take you on a quick jump around the world where I'm going to leap up to the stratosphere, put you on a satellite, and then zoom down. I'm going to do that 3 times. And every time I do it, I'm going to be using that little journey to show you commodities for things that you eat, things that you buy, things that you use. This is the Sundarban National UNESCO World Heritage Site at the bottom of Bangladesh. It should be totally forested like you see on the right. On the left, however, is a slave-based fish processing camp. What looked like buildings were actually enormous racks where enslaved children take the catch of fishermen and dry it for the local fish markets. This also applies to shrimp farms that will feed into the Canadian and North American shrimp that you buy in shops and frozen in supermarkets. A very brave photographer, Bangladeshi photographer friend of mine, actually got a picture of an overseer, a slave overseer, beating children to make them work faster on these racks. And the children themselves, thinking that they were in fact going off to a job that was going to be good to help their families, are paid nothing. They're beaten, sexually assaulted. They work up to 24 hours a day, as long as the fish come in. And when I had a chance to speak to some of them who had just come out of slavery a couple of years ago, I asked them about their health, and they said the key problem was diarrhea, that most of them had diarrhea, and they all knew someone who had died of diarrhea in the fish camp. And I said, and what else? They all named as the second most serious health problem was that they had all seen or knew someone who had been eaten by a tiger. Now, this blew my mind, not least because this is an endangered Bengal tiger species there to be protected against species loss by the UNESCO World Heritage Funds. But when you let slave masters push into these spaces, cut the forests of the largest mangrove forest in South Asia, the largest carbon sink in South Asia, and you push into the territorial areas where tigers live, their deer are pushed out, but you're introducing a new prey animal, which is small children. Now we're flying up.
Good to see you, Jim, Derek, some of the other people that have come in, unbelievable.
Zooming down onto a brick kiln. The brick kiln works kind of like this, and I put a little person in there to show you the scale of primitive medieval brick making that's used with slave labor. On the ground, whole families are enslaved to do this work.
Appreciate those of y'all that are in the chat and gather.
The very dangerous work of firing the bricks as well. Children are used to move the bricks around and so forth. All across that South Asian area, Pakistan, Nepal, India, at least 20,000 of these brick kilns are there. And the point here is not just about CO2 emissions or anything like that. Leave aside the question of global warming for a moment. Their principal fuel source is not coal. It's not wood. It's old tires and used motor oil, 2 of the most carcinogenic and desperately dangerous types of environmental pollutants in the world. Each of those chimneys is putting out carcinogens at a phenomenal rate, as well as the particulate that will create terrible problems.
Preposterous, man.
I'm leaping up again. This photo was actually taken by an astronaut from an orbiting craft. Those are fires as people who are intent of wrecking the protected Amazonian forest are burning them up along the river Xingu. Now this map, forgive me, it's a slightly complicated one, but it's so powerful I just had to show it to you. If you look at the magenta purple line at the top, that's the Amazon River. And the green areas are the parts of the great rainforest, the lungs of our planet, which are still intact. The yellow areas are those areas where there has been an attack on the rainforest, where it's been cut. Almost all of that yellow area is illegal cutting. The blue dots are slavery cases. And the size of the blue dots means that some of the bigger dots means there's 30, 40, 50 slavery cases that had come to the attention of the authorities. The red dots are murders, recorded murders. What you're seeing there in a data form is the scythe, the scimitar, the crescent of violence as it pushes across the wild frontier that still exists in Brazil, in which human beings who are poor and vulnerable are burned up in the process of destroying the rainforest in order to line the pockets of criminals. What do they do there? Well, here's another aerial photo. Everything on the right's been clear-cut. Everything on the left is remaining forest. The little, what looks like little dots there, the little bumps, those are charcoal kilns, charcoal ovens. They're cutting down the forest simply to burn them into charcoal. And you think, that's an awful lot of barbecues. No. Here's the same bumps at the bottom that you saw from above. That charcoal doesn't go to barbecues. It actually goes to the Brazilian steel industry.
Sorry, I'm a little behind on
chat. So the
chat.
steel that goes into cars made in Canada or the US, or plumbing fixtures made in the US or Canada, is normally steel purchased from Brazil, which has come from this and been molded by slave labor using charcoal from illegal cutting in that way. Now, what's the upshot of this? Well, the last time I was in Brazil, I could see it very clearly. Forensic police in the environmental things, exhuming graves of secretly buried ex-slaves. People who, again, because of their disposability, had just been worked almost to death, and then if you looked closely at the film, you'd see where the bullet went in the front and came out the back of that young man who was enslaved to do that destruction of the rainforest that we want to protect. What does all that mean when I put it all together? And I am compressing this very dramatically to stay on time. It means that if slavery were a country, it would have about the population of Canada. And if slavery could be thought of as a country, and using all of the recent ILO data and the Global Slavery Index data, we know that it would have the GDP of a country of about Angola, about $140, $150 billion a year. But if slavery were a country, it would have the carbon emissions that would rank it number 3 in the world after China and the United States. Now, that was the breakthrough that came with this work that I have to say shocked me. I had no idea that slavery could be contributing to global warming, or at least contributing to carbon emissions, and certainly contributing to environmental destruction, species loss, and so forth. Now, the crazy thing is, there's a solution in the problem. There are some 39 million people in slavery today. But if slaves who are being forced to destroy the world's forests are simply employed to replant them after a period of liberation, the carbon credit that would be due or payable on those replanted forests would be 3 times what it would cost to actually do the act of liberation. We know that around the world it would take about $20 billion over a 20 to 30-year period to bring almost all the people in the world out of slavery. That we know how to do. We know how to do it exactly. We've got it costed out very clearly. And that's a very powerful point. All around the world, slaves used to destroy the environment, and all around the world, slaves waiting for freedom to replant the trees that they've been forced to cut. You remember these children? And this is the end of it, Moses. These children that you saw earlier, this is what happened after their families were freed from slavery in that quarry. One of the first things they did was say, we want to replant the forest we were forced to destroy. Before they built us a little school, but before they got anything else, they said, it's time for us to replant this forest. And they obeyed that Gandhian rule about the 5 trees every village should have: food, fiber, fodder, and so forth. That there's a particular group of trees. They went straight out. They asked for help to buy the seedlings, but they said, we're going to replant this. And they left and also began to bring back to a new life the chap that you see in the jumper. That's why I left him in at the very end. He's the guy who was bribed to be a forest ranger without a forest for many years, to look the other way when everything was cut. Here's the book that's all about that. It comes out in January. If you want to pre-order on Amazon, you can do that. Some of my other books are upstairs, and I'll be up there with them too. But that's the story of how slavery, environmental destruction are linked together, and the solutions to both may be in solving both at the same time. Thank you. Oh, no. Thank you.
Now to me, this is some incredibly heartbreaking shit, gang, and thank you all for sticking with me. No, it wasn't an easy topic, but shout out to James Apperson. We were in James's stream before Derek's stream today, and we were talking about the biblical view of slavery, which unfortunately is just such a tragic apologetic that we're dealing with. And it just came up that we really need to kind of change the way we have this whole conversation about slavery, because it's, like I said, it's not a phenomenon in the past. It's a phenomenon that is very much experienced all over the world, as you just found out, by millions of people, and it's terribly tragic and heartbreaking. And the least we could do, the very, very least we could do, is not deny the reality of people living in bondage. The other thing that strikes me is the lack of an urgency and response with believers who want to trumpet themselves as the reason the world is liberated from slavery, and clearly God is anti-slavery, and the whole progress of his creation is a story of him liberating people from bondage. And I'm just like, no, it's not. It isn't. And again, I find it a real serious sort of fucked up to overlook the realities of modern slavery while grandstanding for your religion, claiming a false victory over slavery that hasn't happened and y'all ain't had shit to do with, while venerating the will to be a slave. Don't let anybody fool you that at the heart of all of these religions is the desire to be a slave, to subjugate your will to the desires of another being. Primarily one that you have no reason to believe even exists. I don't want to, I don't want to do too much, crazy talk on it. It's really heartbreaking, and it's something I just think, I hope y'all will join me in talking about it a little bit differently. Let's go link up with the gang real quick. All right, does anybody want to speak up and say anything about this? And gather. Lena. Wayne, no, I don't know. All right, maybe not. But I at least wanted to give you guys the opportunity. Not hearing any takers. Maya, I don't know if everybody can hear me. Stephanie, can you guys hear me? Wayne, I see Wayne's thing lighting up. Let me refresh. I think maybe they're talking and I can't hear him because I see Wayne's thing lighting up. All right, what's up, Wayne? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Sorry about that.
That's cool. I did not know that slaves are now $20 a pop. I did not know that shit.
Yeah, it's real sad.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here trying to marinate and take it all in right now. That was a lot of new information, and yeah, you can't talk about slavery like it was something 100 years ago when there's more slaves than ever. And the only way forward is liberation, not theology, just liberation ideologies for these people. Because if these are human beings that are worth a damn, you know what I mean? We have to change policy and act like it. Like, I really like the guy's idea of like just try and liberate as many as you can and employ them to like plant trees and just do other stuff. Like that was a really interesting solution, and I'm just trying to take all the information in right now.
Yeah, one of the really alarming parts to me is it feels like the money's there. When you put a price tag on it, I can't think of anything that would be more worth the money, right? And it feels like if the willpower was there, the dollar would really be there.
Yeah, what you're telling me is that for what Elon Musk paid for Twitter, he could have ended slavery and given everybody
that's
shelter.
just wild. That's wild.
That's insane. That taxed the hell out of everybody who's a billionaire, all of them. Because if you could end worldwide slavery and still be on the world's richest list of like top 10 people or whatever, tax the fuck out of them. I don't care. I don't want to hear anything else anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's over.
It's the solution to so many problems. We're letting people hoard the world's economy.
Yep.
Just a select group of individuals. Again, give them the gold watch, the plaque. You've won capitalism. Congratulations. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, the tax rate should be crazy over a certain amount. Steph, did you get back in here?
There's so many problems. We're letting people.
I'm getting a YouTube echo, but
yep.
Good to hear from
That's
you.
Me.
Oh, that's you, Wayne?
No, that I heard myself.
Oh, you heard yourself. Yeah. But Steph, did you want to say something? I'm just going off.
Nope.
I appreciate you being here. Lena's mic's open. Lena, do you want to say anything? No, Lena might just be chilling. All right, gang. I really appreciate you guys. I know not a lot of people want to, re-preach the man's sermon. It's a really heavy topic and gives people a lot to think about. That's what we do around here sometimes, man. I said, let's do a stream about it. I feel like it was a really important topic. I'm really glad people tuned in. And we'll go ahead and leave it there. Hopefully it'll be watchable. I hope people catch it later. If you guys like this type of thing and, go ahead, like the stream and do all those great YouTube things. I really do appreciate that. And I hope that, from now on, when these topics of conversation come up, we bring this to people's awareness. Maybe that will reduce the frequency of them wanting to talk about it. Like that would be a big help, because it's very insulting and dehumanizing to what these people are living through. Go ahead, Lena. Do you want to say something? I'm glad you're back. No.
Oh no. Sorry, I didn't have any words to say. I haven't been listening.
Oh, it's all right. No worries. All right, gang. Come link up with us and gather. Appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And I'm so glad you guys tuned in with me. I think it's been a really good day in our community. I really want to thank James for starting us off today with the Mythvision pre-show. I think we had an awesome conversation all there. And it's always nice to have the almost like heart-to-heart level conversations about where we're at with these issues, sort of in our smaller community. Then most of us were over on Derek's channel, participating in the conversation there. And I think that also was an enlightening conversation, and I want to support many of our scholars, because I think a lot of the scholars are really coming to the table now, pushing back against the whole, the Bible doesn't condone slavery apologetic, and that's greatly appreciated. Greatly appreciated. We hung out and gathered, and then decided to do the modern day slavery stream. So appreciate y'all, gang. Come link up with us. We're going to enjoy our freedom for sure. We're going to toast with the crew and have some fun. Please do take care of yourselves, everyone. We love you so much. And we'll see you next time. In the name of the Darwin, the Dawkins, and the Christopher Hitchens, science bless you all. Poof!
Zach? Why she wanna leave me alone? Saying all I do is wrong. No rights when they been left turns. Playing that she gotta let it burn. Saying that the house not a home. Sunshine cause she heard it all before. Sometimes she don't wanna be alone. Most times she don't want me gone. She don't know I try my all. She don't know I sprung in the sun, but I'm going in the winter, so we good to the fall. Remember how I told you I get it and I win. Now I'm got it, you ain't answer my call. Wonder if I've been moving too strong. Maybe I just been moving too boss. Really hate when the feeling get lost. Nowadays she just dodge my calls. In the game throwing laws like Paul. Young legend Miss John like Wall. And I wish you never met like Carl. Dick game lay it down like law. Made plans but you canceled them all. I was just trying to splurge in the mall. Now I'm home stacking bread till you call.
It's time to roll. She tryna slide. We smoking Zah. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride. We smoking. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl.
We smoking that side. I'm trying to get high. She said that she not ready for love, stop wasting my time. I got demons in my closet, I can't hide. I did all my exes wrong, they wish I died. Damn, I tried. They won't believe me when I say this. Oh my God, what a blessing. Hello Phoenix, that's my twin. I told these hoes they won't get my heart again, not again. Cause they went missing when I needed just a friend.
They went missing, yeah, they all went missing. They don't want no smoke, they hit the blunt and started tripping. My daughter about to be 5, I ain't got no time to be bitching. I'm still reminiscing, we ain't had no food in the kitchen. I gotta go stack. I'm waiting, know I'm heading, but I'm going up. I hit the side, now your Zach feel like I'm throwing up. And I just took another perk, cause one wasn't enough. Yeah. It's time to roll. She tryna slide. We smoking Zah. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride. We smoking. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna slide, we smoking Zah. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl. It's time to roll. She tryna ride, we smoking. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl.
Playing that she gotta let it burn. Saying that the house not a home. Sunshine cause she heard it all before. Sometimes she don't wanna be alone. Most times she don't want me gone. She don't know I try my all. She don't know I sprung in the summer, but I'm going in the winter, so we good to the fall. Remember how I told you I get it and I win. Now I'm got it, you ain't answer my call. Wonder if I've been moving too strong. Maybe I just been moving too boss. Really hate when the feeling get lost. Nowadays she just dodge my calls. In the game throwing laws like Paul. Young legend Miss John like Wall. And I wish you never met like Call. Thick game lay it down like law. Made plans but you canceled them all. I was just trying to splurge in the mall. Now I'm home stacking bread till you call.
It's time to roll. She tryna slide. We smoking Zah. Stop acting shy. Cause you a demon when I get between your thighs, girl. You like my rib, you know I need you by my side, girl.